All right, this is my first question. In-N-Out or Five Guys?
Five Guys.
Oh, wow. I didn't expect that.
For the fries, bro.
Okay.
It's the fries at Five Guys.
Yeah. And why the burgers are comparable to you? It's the fries are too much better.
The fries are, you got to have good fries with a burger.
Yeah.
You can have an average burger and good fries. You got great fries and a decent burger at Five Guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll accept it. You might be the first, really real Californian who has gone Five Guys.
Five Guys,
We'll
bro.
take it.
And their shakes are original. And they're
Which
better.
ones?
Five Guys
Five
shakes,
Guys?
yes. It's not. In-N-Out is a mechanism. It's a machine. It's organized.
It's a pretty clean machine, though.
Yeah, but it's a little more raw and organic, a little rough around the edges.
There's
it's more like
peanut
a church
shells.
plant. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good connection. I haven't heard that one yet.
It's more like a church plant, yeah.
But that's perfect because you are a church planter.
Yes, I am.
Welcome to Season 3 of 10 Questions with 10 Pastors. Brought to you by Gateway Seminary. With your host, Tyler Sanders. This episode was recorded live at the 2023 SPC Annual Meeting.
This is Port Wilburn I'm with. He's associational missionary for the Bridges Bay Area Association and church planter.
Yes, sir.
Planted Rock Harbor Church. What city was that in?
Rock Harbor in San Pablo.
San Pablo, okay.
Yeah.
And you were missions pastor there, and you've been sent out from there.
I've been sent out from there when I got to the place where the church was pretty stable, and I'm like, okay, Lord, what's next? The state convention called me in to work with African American church planting. And so planted 12 churches in like a 3-year period, which was like they hadn't seen that happen.
Right.
And then from there, I ended up getting voted in as the associational missionary when my predecessor decided he was leaving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Joe Caldwell.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're also a Gateway grad?
Gateway grad, 2005. Actually, diploma of theology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, diploma. I knew it was the MDiv equivalent.
Oh, sure,
Diploma of theology.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, that's this all kind of leads to my first question, and I just wanted to, I was hoping you could tell us how you became a Christian.
Okay, I'll give you the short version of this. So, in '89, it was 1989.
Okay.
And so I was dating one of God's children, his daughters, and it was, and I knew of God. I wasn't against God or anti-God or anything like that. I was just, I knew God was up there. We're down here. He does this thing. We do our thing. You pay him homage. Maybe watch some televangelists on Sunday morning. That was pretty much my extent of it, of what I knew about God. And so she was the first person, and I knew people that went to church.
Yeah.
She was the first person I got to see up close and personal who actually had a relationship with God that was struggling at the time. And I never seen that before. I heard people go to church and had not watched anyone walk with God.
Right.
Even if it's a strained walk.
Yeah.
Or a backslidden walk or a tension, relationship. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
And so it was in her struggle that witnessed to me about Jesus and the relationship that he calls us to have. And one day she said she can't live. We were living together at the time. And she got up one day and said, you know what? I can't live like this anymore. I gotta go.
Wow. And
she left. And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? Don't leave, choose me over God, It was like, I let her walk through what she had to walk through, and she started going back to church and everything, and I wasn't against that.
Yeah.
So as she started going, I tell people, God got a two for one. She goes back, in fellowship and being right with the Lord, and God got me as a addition. And so it was in her recommitting her life. I started going to church. Yeah. And for the first time, it was shortly after going to church and listening. Now I know a God who speaks to you. Now I know a God who relates with you. Yeah. So I'm sitting in there in the sermons, listening to the sermons, and God is just singing, sending these zingers right into my heart.
Yeah.
And it was surely, probably I don't know what the timeline of that, but I gave my life to the Lord in an altar call. And I only knew at that point in time when I came to Jesus, I only knew one way to serve him. After watching what she went through, I only knew one way to come to God, and that was all the way. That if you're going to do this, you do this all the way.
Yeah.
And my life just literally did a 180.
Yeah.
I surrendered it all, and it was interesting because I had this business where I was a process server, so I served legal documents at the time. Interesting. I go from serving the bad news to good news, right? That's a whole nother story. But
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so I'm in my car, driving around, dropping off notices, going to the courthouses, but I found Christian radio. And it was during that time, that was my primary, I would say, mode of discipleship and training was coming through, Christian radio, listening to J. Vernon McGee, Jack Hayford, Chuck Swindoll, the Bible Answer Man, Focus on the Family Life Today. Yeah. All this stuff just day in and day out. Yeah. God is just speaking to me and built me up really fast and very strong. Yeah. I went through the Bible bus with J. Vernon McGee 3 times in my car.
Wow.
Right. So that's from Genesis to Revelation in my car. Yeah. 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night is when J. Vernon McGee would come on, And so I learned Christ and grew in Christ tremendously, even to the point where I got saved in a non-denominational Pentecostal church. Yeah. That was a Word of Faith church. Yeah. Within a year of me getting saved, I'm discerning teaching coming from the church and what I've been learning through Christian radio. Yeah. And it got to the place where I had to go to the church. I had to go to the pastor. So the Bible is saying this. The Bible says this, and you're saying this. How do we reconcile this? And his only response to me was, I know this works, and you shouldn't listen to everything on the radio. Wow. And I knew at that time it was time for me to go. Time to go, yeah. And this is not having any background Christianity. Yeah. So I'm telling the pastor, right. Yeah. This is not right. Yeah. What you're teaching is not right. Something's wrong. I'm listening to 10, 12 different Bible teachers, and they're all in this one rhythm of teaching and things that they're saying that is lining up. Yeah, yeah. And I come here, and I'm hearing something different. Yeah. I mean, it got to the place I literally could not sit in the service anymore. Yeah. And I knew God was calling me to another place. We ended up in I think 2 other churches before we ended up in a Southern Baptist church. Wow. Where God opened the door for everything else that has led to this moment. Yeah. That's a long story short.
No,
but
that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. What are you reading right now?
Right now, there's a couple of things I'm reading. Because I'm an associational missionary, there's a book by Ray Gentry called Baptist Associations, which is a really good book.
I've heard of that.
I think you guys may have it now in seminary classes. They make it required reading.
I think so, yeah.
That's really good reading. Ray Gentry is an awesome leader. There's a new book I just got last night that I'm going to be opening up by Bryan Loritts called The Offensive Church. And it's really a fresh look at discipleship and how to approach discipleship, especially in light of the divisions of our culture and everything, and how to engage our culture in a way, or how to disciple people in a way that looks and engages the culture in which we live today. Yeah. Right? So we have to be able to deal with the tensions of the world and all the different issues that even we're going to be taking up here at the convention this week. We got to, how would Jesus approach these things, and really taking a deep dive back into the scriptures and looking at some of the racial tensions that existed in that time, being a Jew and Samaritans and all that stuff. I mean, those were intentional tensions that Jesus wrestled with. Yeah. He didn't call it, BLM or anything like that. But when it says in John, I think it's John, was he had to go to Samaria. Yeah, he did that intentionally. Right, engaged that woman at the well intentionally. Yeah. And even she was surprised, right? She's like,
Sure, yeah.
what are you dealing with me? I'm a Samaritan.
You know who I am,
You know
right?
who I am. What are
Yeah.
you dealing with me?
Yeah,
Why are you even talking? Then he asked her for a drink.
right.
He didn't have anything to drink with.
Yeah,
That means that he was asking for her a drink out of her cup,
yeah,
which was even another tension. Like, you want to drink out of my cup?
yeah,
First, you're talking to me,
yeah,
and you want to drink out of my cup.
yeah,
Are you serious right now?
yeah, yeah.
That blew her mind.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and the disciples were like, what are you doing, Jesus?
Right.
But they knew better to open their mouths
Yeah.
and say that. But
Well, and that's one of those things that's hard for us sometimes to catch. Modern readers who just don't always have that background knowledge
Right.
of knowing what that means.
Right.
Even like I always think it's funny that like, the Good Samaritan, that's a term that's just entered like the English language.
Right.
It's lost a lot of the edge of what that wasn't a thing that existed in the Jewish mind back then.
No.
A Good Samaritan. You know what I mean? Like that was a
those two words didn't go together.
They couldn't put those things together. And
Right,
for
because
us,
they were dogs. I mean,
right.
they
Yeah, they saw
literally
them-
looked at as dogs.
Yeah, yeah,
That they had no significance.
Yeah.
They had no value. They had no meaning.
yeah,
And Jesus said he was good.
yeah,
Yeah, so yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about preaching a little bit.
Okay.
So I like to ask people kind of big picture. Like, what's your approach to preaching kind of like in terms of themes? How did you like plan out big sermon, series? What was your like kind of thinking on that?
I'm so random. So I'm one of those guys. I'm a random guy. I'm not a systems or organized in that way. I married organization, so that's they say we got to know your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so I surround myself around people that have the strength that I don't have.
Yeah.
And so my wife is the organizer. She's the systems person in our lives. So in approaching series, I the closest thing I get to series is I'll preach like books of the Bible, small books of the Bible, so
Yeah.
I can
Go
go
all the
through
way
that.
through.
I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
I'm good enough for that. But I'm not. You're not going to see a 6-month, year planned out. That was one of the. Doing that in a seminary class was probably the last time I did that. Planned out a whole series like that.
Yeah.
But I like taking the books of the Bible, and I like camping out in text.
Yeah.
And I would do that. I had certain rhythms when I was regularly pastoring.
Yeah.
And we would do, in the summer, we would camp out on text for a summer.
Yeah.
So we would hang out there.
Yeah.
I know, and we did a series in John where we did do the a 21-day fast. So we did 21 chapters.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Of John. So we did do that. And so things like that. So there was some systems to the madness, but it was still a lot of randomness in there. I didn't mind breaking off.
Yeah.
For when God prompted me
There's
to do
something
another
new
sermon.
to do. Yeah. Now, what was your like week to week prep like? Did you have any kind of routine or anything you would go through when you were actually like writing your sermon out?
There was not a big routine. I would just make sure I made time at least 3 or 4 days a week to spend a couple of hours of study and meditation.
Yeah.
I remember Dr. Gainey would say, you just need to stay well read, just to make sure a good flow of information and content you're receiving in order to, be a little more fluid in how you share the text and illustrations and those kinds of things. And then you spend the time in the text. Yeah. And then you let how you've engaged other aspects of the world kind of come in culturally, relationally, contextually, and then just let it flow, you know. And so, I like outlines. I never scripted. I'm an outline guy. So that way it gives me a little more freedom and flexibility. And I'll highlight my illustrations. But that's the most you get out of it. You won't ever, I don't think I've ever scripted anything.
Yeah, like a full manuscript type thing.
That's not happening.
Yeah. What do you think the most difficult passage or topic you've preached on is?
Revelation is always been challenging text. And I would say specifically, don't think I look at any text real hard to preach, and I don't think I've ignored any text. And we've taught on, homosexuality and those things.
Yeah.
Everybody, some people stay away from it, or we try to kind of dance around it. But it's not like you got a whole bunch of those texts, you're dealing with either. So you have to be intentional with just engaging the culture.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's no real difficult text. You give it to me, let's go with it. So I've never stayed away from anything.
Yeah.
If I take the whole book, I take the whole book.
Yeah.
We've done topical things as well, addressing specifics in the world and engaging the culture, race relations and things like that. And there's a ton. I mean, the Bible is full. Acts 6 was a racial thing. If you look at the widows that were being overlooked, they were Grecian. The Grecian widows were being overlooked.
Right.
For the Hellenistic widows, that was the complaint.
Yeah.
That was a racial tension thing, because the people that were empowered, those that were early disciples, were those that were feeding their friends.
Yeah.
And not feeding the other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other people started complaining.
Yeah.
Hey, our people were being overlooked. And guess what they did? The first deacons, their assignment was make sure there was equality in the feeding of the people.
Yeah.
That were being discriminated from just food. Now, if you think that's the early church, how much more so? I mean, and we want to minimize at times, folks that make complaints, say, hey, we feel that we're not getting a fair share here. And you can't just say that's their perceived idea. You got to legitimately hear people.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? And address it.
Yeah.
And look at what the complaint is. If they're saying, hey, our folks ain't getting food, let's look over here. No, ain't no food over there,
Yeah.
I mean,
and we got to fix it.
Let's fix it.
Yeah.
That's what the deacons were for.
Yeah.
That's their first assignment, was to fix a problem.
Yeah.
So if you're a deacon, fix the problems, deacon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their assignment.
That's good right there. Now, you're church planner and associational missionary.
Yeah.
We've talked to a lot of church planners so far, or recently, and that means wearing a lot of hats, doing lots of different things.
That means no money, no cash, no building.
Yeah.
That's what that means. You're planning the church.
Yeah, but you also have to do everything,
either.
right? Yeah. And so I guess my question is, what's like one of those pastoral roles or responsibilities that you kind of feel like is a sweet spot for you? And what's one that's like a growing kind of area, growing edge maybe?
The sweet spot is people. I have a nickname. They call me Barnabas. People call me Barnabas. I'm an encourager. I love to encourage. I love to come. That's why I planted 12 churches. I was able to plant church. Those guys were out there. I didn't do anything special. They were already out there. They just needed someone to come alongside them and encourage them in what God had already called them to be and do. That's my greatest assignment. If I can help you be everything that God's called you to be, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
But guess what? I don't make the call. I don't assign the call. All I do is come and help blowing that flame that God has lit in your heart.
Yeah.
So that's my sweet spot, But you got to have a flame lit. If you haven't been called, I can't do it. I can't light that flame.
Yeah.
I can't call you. All I can do is if you tell me, Brother Port, I really feel I've been called to do this, or God is really putting this on my heart. Let's explore what that looks like.
Yeah.
Let's point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Let's connect you. When Paul got saved and he tried to join the church, right? What did they do? Like, you ain't coming over here. They shut him down.
Yeah.
It said, but who came alongside of him? It said, but Barnabas came.
Yeah.
And Barnabas took him.
Yeah.
And Barnabas took him to the apostles and said, hey, he told him his story. He said, this guy, blah, 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 told him Paul's story, and it turned him loose.
Yeah.
I get to do that as an associational missionary.
Yeah.
I get to do that with church planners. I take guys, I tell them, get their story, and then I tell their story to someone else, and I turn them loose to do what God's called them to do.
Yeah. Now,
Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
There's like a second part, I guess. What's a part like what's a role that's like a growing edge, you feel like?
Growing edge is being more Paulistic in my temperament. My wife is like, yeah, you're a Barnabas. Sometimes you need to be a little more Paul, And you keep in mind, when Barnabas was one that found Paul, right?
Yeah.
Same way he came alongside John Mark, and when the time came, Paul didn't want to deal with John Mark, right? In Acts, right? He's like, nah, he bailed on us the first time. He can't come back with us on this second assignment. And Barnabas was like, man, come on, give him another shot. He's going to be all right. We're going to do this, And I'm ad-libbing, of course, we know that. But, we can only assume the argument. But they said it was no small disagreement. So, but Barnabas was a type A. I'm sorry, Paul was more type A, more focused. Let's get it done. We don't have time to waste. I like that guy. I don't like that guy. Right. This guy's coming with us. That guy's not coming with us. Paint. End of the story. And Barnabas will give you 2, 3, 4 chances, right? And so that's what he was doing, John Mark. But keep in mind, that's the same thing that Barnabas did for Paul. When
for
Paul,
sure.
Nobody wanted to deal with Paul. I would have told Paul. I said, look, when nobody wanted to deal with you, I dealt with you, right? So let's give this guy another chance. Didn't happen that way. We see it in the scriptures they parted ways, but Paul later on says, hey, bring John Mark. He's good for the work. But that was some years later. There was some reconciliation. But in the beginning, Paul's type A. And so that's my weak part. There's times where I need to be a little more type A, a little more focused, a little more like, okay, how many times we want to deal with this guy who keeps, messing up or whatever the situation, sometimes you got to turn them loose and let God deal with them. But you can't always walk with people who are, continuing to fall off, So I would say that's probably, how many times is, you stop working with someone, how many times you kind of, turn things loose and just kind of turn it over to the Lord. So,
can you tell me a swing and a miss you've had in ministry?
I would probably say it's some of those situations where maybe you give a person too many chances. We tried out so many different things in ministry. I tell people I'm not turning down anything but my collar in the way of opportunity, and so we try out a bunch of stuff. Let's see what works. Let's move on. What doesn't work. I can't think of the misses, the successes, I think, outweigh the misses in ministry. And so I don't even really, I'm so attention deficit, I can't even remember one that we missed. But I'm sure there was a few of them. I think maybe even some, even more so maybe when in counseling situations, maybe being a little too gracious at times. Where, there's some situations we can't afford to be, too lenient in certain situations. I think that's a message of the church at large. There's situations even in what we're dealing with in the culture today with some of the things that we've allowed to happen in the church, and maybe, I won't say intentionally turn a blind eye, but maybe didn't address things the way we should have. We got to be real careful of that today. And so without getting too specific.
There's this question. It's kind of hard for me to ask this question. Well, I've realized that I don't ask it very well. You were in seminary. What's like the one thing a seminary student needs to leave seminary with? Like if they miss it, they've missed something really valuable in their seminary education.
I think the discipline of just embracing that time of preparation. I think we all need that. How to properly approach the text, I think, is really healthy. I think that's the one thing, knowing how to study the scriptures. I think really sets you up for a better mission field experience, if you will, when you can properly assess the Word of God. I think that's one of the things that seminary really prepares you for more than anything else. I tell people, you go to seminary, there's so much being thrown at you. It's just, you pack the suitcase of all the things you're learning. And then when you get on the ground, it's like when you get to vacation or you get to where you're going, and you begin to unpack the things that you may need, practical things that actually fit and apply to the situation, leadership, organizational things, working with people, structures, those kind of things. I think that's the best thing you get from seminary.
Yeah.
It's just how to do ministry.
Yeah.
I think the overall picture of how to do ministry.
Yeah.
It's never one size fits all, or even when you get on the ground, it's completely different, and you have to change things. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, is it kind of like it gives you a framework or something like that? It kind of gives
framework.
you like the building blocks, maybe? Is
Yeah,
that
it
kind of
does,
the way to-
because keep in mind it's still abstract.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, you may learn something in seminary, and it's not a direct correlation when you get on the mission field.
Yeah.
I mean, you still got to go through the personal experience of what you're engaging, and how you're engaging, and who you're engaging, because those things are, they're more pragmatic, if you will, and not. I mean, this spiritual. This is a spiritual thing, and so what we're learning is what we're learning. It's academics and all those things, which are good, but when you get on the missions field, how do you? Those are seminary is the professionalism of what we're doing, but how, as the psalmist says, as a deer pants for water, my heart pants after you. Yeah. To the Lord. Seminary don't teach you how to do that. Yeah. When you get to the ground, you get on the mission field, and you actually have to pray for people. Yeah. Missionary is not really. The seminary is not preparing you necessarily to do that. Right. It may tell you how to search for prayers and how to study prayers, but it's not really teaching you how to get on your face before God. Yeah. We don't have a class. There's no seminary class. Okay. Everybody right now, everyone get on their face. Yeah, we practice it. We're going to practice this. Yeah. We're just going to get on our face before the Lord. That's the class today. Right. Right. You got 45 minutes. Just go before Jesus. Yeah. And then when you're done, class is over. Right. Right. That actually would be good. That might be a good class, yeah. If you could go back and tell a young Port, your first year as a pastor, maybe your first year planning that church, what advice would you give young Port? Get some healthy rhythms in place. Work on self-care. You can't go 100 miles an hour 7 days a week. I used to argue with my, when I was doing spiritual formation, the practicum class. Oh, yeah. And I had a DOM. They tell you your spiritual leader needs to be someone in a position where you want to be, or your mentor needs to be in a position of, and I never, even though I'm an associational missionary and I met with the DOM, I really had no I had no desire to be a director of missions. I was just meeting with him as my spiritual director. Yeah. But it wasn't like I was really trying to be in his role, because my focus was on church planting. Yeah. But here I am now in the role that he sat in. Yeah. And so, like I said, I would tell myself, get some good rhythms in place. Yeah. Take care of yourself more. Take some breaks. Sabbath. Oh my God, that's get rest. Get rest. Yeah. We do not Sabbath well, folks. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. He says, Yeah. And there's something to that I've learned over the years that I wish I'd have known sooner. Yeah. I would argue at times with my mentor that my study of the text for seminary was just as good as regular study for my personal growth. I usually think the Bible is the Bible, right? If I'm reading it, I'm reading it. If I'm taking it in, I'm taking it in, right? I mean, what difference if I'm writing the paper afterwards or it's still getting in me.
Yeah.
He says, it's different.
It's a little different.
It is.
Yeah.
I argued that for years until I realized
Right.
I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So listen to that.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, in hindsight now,
Yeah. Well, that's a lesson you just have to learn. It may be for a lot of people one you just have to learn after
Yep.
doing it,
Yep. 20, graduated 2005. So, that's 18 years.
Yeah.
I had a son, so I announced him. When I came to seminary, I had 4 girls, and I got to speak at graduation. And it was in my graduation speech that I announced the birth of our 5th child, Zion. And so, just briefly, I came. My children, Ariel means lioness of God. Michaela is number 2, means who is like God. Number 3 is Alia, God's presence or God's being. And number 4 daughter is Faith, because a man with 4 girls got to have a lot of faith, right? And so we didn't name them, we didn't pre-name them, we named them all after they got here, right?
Yeah.
And so when Faith, they all represent seasons of our lives. My wife and I life.
Yeah.
And so when we had Faith, that was a time where we sold our house, went to seminary, made huge steps, offloaded all of our worldly possessions, took a step, said, okay, Lord, if you opening up this door, we'll go, and this is what we'll do. And so we did that, all stepped in faith.
Yeah.
And then my 5th child is Zion, the place where God dwells. So faith sent us to seminary.
Yeah.
Zion took us home.
Wow.
With the place where God dwells.
Yeah.
And so they all represent seasons of our lives. And so Zion came at that season. It was time to leave seminary. Faith was born, she was 2 when we came to seminary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's all hindsight now, right? So,
right.
But
Now
God,
you can see it.
God tells a story through our random names of our children.
Yeah.
He goes back in hindsight and says, this is a story.
Yeah.
And he tells a story.
Yeah.
And so,
That's perfect. Well, Port, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Amen.
We
brother.
really appreciate
Thank you for having me. Gateway Seminary, the best in the West.
We'll keep that in the podcast. No shit.